What is it he worried about? Falling. And when he said it, I understood that this was not a pathetic remark. This is a real one, because there are people in this room who know that when you take a fall after a certain age, the chances of a hip breaking are almost certain. And the chances of having to recover a very long time are almost certain. And the chances that it will be the first step on the long road to the last step are very high. So it is not pathetic at all, but it is sad that we have defined old age in this country as getting ready to break and fall and come apart. Because that is part of being old, but not all of being old. And all of us who are not yet, quote, old, wherever that begins, have already had a taste of this. Think about it. If you're over 30, something isn't working as well as it used to. You know that. It might be overcomeable. Maybe you don't have to squint early in the morning. Maybe you can still make things out without a pair of glasses, or at least not all of the time. If you've been active as an athlete, you're actually wearing yourself out all the faster. I'm walking on the way to the gym 12 years ago now. Was it that long? Maybe more. And I trip over a line in the sidewalk. So I'm just above 40, I should point out. I'm not an old person in anyone's imagination, except perhaps in Africa. I fall down, I get up, I dust myself off, I walk to the gym, I do my exercise, I get off of the elliptical or whatever thing I'm using to make myself sweat, look down, and there's a basketball where my knee used to be. And I realize that I'm not going to recover the way I did when I was in high school, and I hobble off to the emergency room. I have made it very, very much my purpose not to fall down like that ever again, because I now realize that my body will not get back up on its 2 feet quite as rapidly as it did when I was a child, and I am not an old man. I've been talking about the spirituality and the spiritual life of the old for the last few weeks, but I haven't been talking about the physical reality of being old, partly because it's difficult, partly because it's unpleasant, partly because it's part of the stereotype. But I want to address that today. I'm going to start by saying when I was a young preacher, I had dreams of being eloquent and stirring and moving and being able to move vast crowds to tearful obeisance, and that's never going to happen. So I gave that up. And what I've decided instead, the only gift that I really have, is that I can be honest, and I can be frank, and I can be courageous, and whether or not it's beautiful or moving, I leave it to you to decide. And I'm going to talk about aches and pains in the body, and I'm going to talk about pain today, because at a certain point you begin to realize that pain is a daily part of your life. And I don't mean metaphorical pain. I mean elbows and wrists and hips and knees and all sorts of things that never used to complain. In fact, that becomes the defining element for life as you get older and older, is that your body begins very much to tell you it is no longer going to go along with your wishes, at least not readily or willingly. There were times when I was young. You remember them, don't you? All of us remember them. We forget old people remember when they were young. When you would wake up in the morning and you could literally bound out of bed. When you could take the steps 2 and 3 at a time, and you wouldn't feel like you were broken at the top. You can remember, I can remember, not so long ago. And every now and then you get just a little bit of it when you take in a breath and you feel life surge through your limbs and you feel alive all the way out to your fingernails. When you're a kid, that happens every hour. When you're an old man, it might happen once a year. Who knows? We can tell that our powers, our physical abilities, are not what we remember them to be, and that brings a bit of sadness. But I'd like to quote something to you by Oscar Wilde that I found very helpful in approaching this question. He writes, and I have to put my glasses back on to get it correct, "The soul is born old but grows young. That is the comedy of life. And the body is born young and grows old. That's the tragedy." Anyone remember the stories of Arthur and the Round Table? And of course you remember Merlin, whose peculiar curse was that he wasn't aging, he was youthening. That as he got older, he was actually getting younger and was heading back toward infancy. It's a fantasy, I know, but I think Oscar Wilde and this idea of getting younger is actually a useful notion, because as our bodies become less reliable, our hearts become more reliable. I would like to talk about learning for a moment. That, as William James said, when a man ceases to grow, no matter what his years, that's the minute he turns old. And I think as you get older, you don't stop learning. In fact, I think one of the things that happens as you get older is that you begin to learn that half the stuff you thought you knew, you didn't really know after all. I am discovering that the more books I read, the less I really know. I discovered that the more stuff I try to learn, the less I am confident of anything that I ever understood. You remember what the word sophomore means? Wise fool. Beware the man who knows one book, it used to be said. We could apply that to numbers of people in religious life, by the way. But my point here is that sometimes you can reach a point in life when your soul begins to get younger, which is to say you begin to learn not for the point of trying to acquire more knowledge, but to release the unknowledge that you have acquired over a lifetime. The assumptions, the beliefs, the habits that you now find unsuitable to you. Josh Billings, one of the early American comedians, once said, "It ain't what a man knows that makes him foolish, it's what he thinks he knows that just ain't so." It is learning what just ain't so that is the true learning of maturity. It is the casting off of things that you thought you knew or understood. It is the second innocence. And I do mean it as second innocence, not going back to the first, because the first innocence doesn't count. That's when you are innocent and stupid. When you're old, you are innocent and learned. And I think that is one of the capacities that age has. And ironically, it is connected to the decline of the body. We become younger in soul only as we become older in body. And that's where this pain thing comes in. Because age brings more and more failure. Failure of the body to do what we considered important. We depend upon it. We think it's the thing that we have. We become proud of it. We look in the mirror when we're 20 and bask in our own beauty and magnificence, or in imagined beauty at least. We still see it in our 30s. We can see it in our 40s. Then when the day comes when you have to put on the glasses to see in the mirror, that you realize that the delusion has been there all along. But I'm telling you that as your body abandons you, and it does, it will, there's no question about it, it is a moment, it is a time that is pregnant with the possible. H.L. Mencken said, "Old age ain't no place for sissies." And he's right. The challenge of old age is to youthen your soul while your body gets old, because that's the only time you can really do it. Because guess what? When your body works and does everything you want, you're a slave to it. You think it's what you're about, being able to put on the clothes, drive the car, clean the house, climb the mountain.